When one of the men, Leroy, saw her and went closer because he was curious. When he realized she was holding a golden comb, he decided to capture what he thought was just a mere small girl, along with the golden comb. He could sell both of them to the neighboring villagers for a hefty price. Once upon a time, in a small community in western Jamaica, there was a blue hole where the water stood still, and the water was as clear as glass. In a community where the villagers were both skilled fishermen and farmers, the prosperity of the village soared. The bountiful daily catch, coupled with abundant harvests, became the envy of neighboring settlements. Many marveled at the flourishing village, pondering the secrets hidden within its waters. Intruders frequently attempted to fish in the thriving village's waters, but their efforts were in vain. The river, a guardian in its own right, provided sustenance for its inhabitants and adeptly shielded itself from outsiders. The community thrived on the harmony between the diligent fishermen, nurturing farmers, and the benevolent river that bestowed its blessings upon them. The legends had it that the community was protected by a beautiful but deadly water spirit called the River Muma. Yearly sacrifices of animals were required to keep her waters from flooding the nearby houses and businesses. If these sacrifices were not made, accidents and disappearance would start to occur until her spirit was appeased. Nala was the daughter of the Queen of the River. Nala, being young and curious, would often wander from afar in amazement at the villagers fishing and swimming in the waters. She would stay on her rock as she smiled and waited to see what the villagers were up to next. When she had her fill of fun, she would swim back into the depths of the water to return home to her mother. One day, Nala had ventured out into the shallow while some villagers were swimming. She wore a mystical bracelet that her mother had given her, which allowed her to have human legs whenever they wanted to walk among the villagers. She was combing her long black hair on a rock, when one of the men, Leroy, saw her and went closer because he was curious. When he realized she was holding a golden comb, he decided to capture what he thought was just a mere small girl, along with the golden comb. He could sell both of them to the neighboring villagers for a hefty price. Nala would be sold as a domestic slave, and the comb would bring him lots of riches. What he didn't know was that Nala was no mere girl. She was the River Muma's daughter, who watched over the villagers. She tried to resist, but Leroy was stronger and faster. He grabbed her by the arm and snatched the comb from her hand. He threw her into a sack and ran away, leaving behind the bracelet that fell off her wrist. Without the bracelet, Nala's legs turned back into a fishtail, and she was trapped inside the sack, unable to breathe. Evening came, and the River Muma, whose name was Asha, searched for her beloved daughter but soon realized she was captured. She was furious and heartbroken. She sent out warnings by flooding the streets, destroying the crops, and killing the animals. Fishermen couldn't venture into the water, as the water turned black and dead fishes washed up on the bank of the river. The stench could be smelled from afar. The word spread throughout the community, as the whispers continued. One morning, an elder member of the community, Samuel, had a dream, seeing the furious River Muma sending a warning. She said that if her most prized possessions, her beloved daughter and her golden comb, were not returned unharmed, she would flood the rivers with the blood of the villagers. And Leroy should be given as a sacrifice. As Samuel awoke, he shivered in fear. He wasted no time in rushing to each villager's house to narrate the message. Many laughed at him and mocked that he was mad. Others cowered in fear, as they remembered the tales of old that their grandparents had passed on to them. Leroy, however, refused to return Asha's daughter and golden comb. He had sold Nala to a rich merchant, who kept her in a cage and displayed her as a curiosity. He had hidden the comb in his house, planning to leave the community soon and reside elsewhere, where he could spend his riches. He did not believe in Asha or her wrath. He thought it was all superstition and nonsense. One day, Asha came on land as a beautiful young woman, who intercepted Leroy as he was walking on the street. She asked him for help, pretending to be lost and hungry. He was charmed by her beauty and kindness, and offered to take her to his house. He did not recognize her as the mother of the girl he had stolen. She had disguised herself with magic, changing her hair and eye color. After a few days, he started to fall in love with her and soon asked her to marry him. Though his parents warned him against marrying someone he didn't know her background, he went ahead and married her. He thought he had found the perfect wife, who was sweet and gentle, and never asked him any questions. After a week, he started to get sick and was often visiting the village nurse. But no medicine could cure his sickness. He felt a constant pain in his chest, as if something was squeezing his heart. He soon told his mystery wife about Nala and the comb he had stolen, and his plans to leave the community. She pretended to be interested and supportive, and convinced him to retrieve Nala that he had sold, as she would like to keep her as her maid. He agreed, and devised a plan with some of his friends from a neighboring community. They broke into the merchant's home, where he had a secret hideaway where he kept Nala in a cage. Leroy went in alone, not wanting his friends to know what he was actually there to steal. He found Nala, who was weak and thirsty, and freed her from the cage. He put her in a sack, and ran away, leaving behind a note for his friends stating that he had paid the merchant for her. He hoped that the merchant would not suspect him. He brought Nala to his house, where his wife was waiting. She pretended to not care about Nala. She hinted to Nala not to reveal who she was to her. She told Leroy to follow her to the river edge, where they could have a swim. Leroy was pleased, and thought he had the best wife in the world. He did not notice Nala's bracelet on his wife's wrist or the glint in her eyes. He carried Nala to the river edge and followed his wife into the water. As soon as he entered the water, his wife's face changed. Her hair and eyes turned back to their original color, and she revealed herself as the River Muma Asha, the guardian water spirit of the community. Leroy was frozen in fear. She snatched the comb from his pocket, and freed Nala from the sack. She hugged her and kissed her, and thanked her for enduring the ordeal. Leroy did not notice the villagers watching them from the shore, curious and suspicious. Asha lunged at him and changed into a fearsome creature with scales and claws. She grabbed him and dragged him into the depths of the blue hole. He screamed and struggled, but it was no use. She took him to her underwater lair, where he would remain for the rest of his life as her prisoner. She would torture him and make him suffer for what he had done to her and her daughter. He would never see the light of day again. The villagers saw everything unfold as Leroy's screams echoed through the village. They were filled with horror and remorse. They realized that Samuel was right, and that they had ignored Asha's warning. Leroy's parents and the elder felt a mix of emotions after he was taken by the River Muma Asha. They felt grief and sorrow for losing their son and friend, but they also felt guilt and shame for not stopping him from doing wrong. They felt anger and resentment towards him for bringing disaster to the community, but they also felt pity and compassion for him for suffering the water spirit's wrath. They felt fear and awe of the River Muma's power, but they also felt gratitude and respect for her mercy. They felt a lot of things, but they could not express them. They could only hope that Leroy would find some peace in his eternal prison. Some days later, the villagers gathered at the blue hole and offered their apologies and prayers to the water spirit. They promised to respect her and her daughter and to never harm them again. They also vowed to make the sacrifices regularly and to live in harmony with nature. Asha heard their pleas and decided to spare them. She calmed the waters and restored the life and beauty of the river. She and Nala continued to watch over the villagers, but they never showed themselves again. They remained hidden in the depths of the blue hole, never to be seen again. Leroy's parents were comforted by the villagers, who showed them kindness and sympathy. They missed their son dearly, and wished he had made better choices in his life. They were happy that the villagers didn't have to suffer for their son's greedy and selfish actions, and that the River Muma had spared them. The elders warned the villagers of the importance of honesty, and said that if Leroy had returned Nala and the golden comb when the warning came from Samuel, he wouldn't have met the fate he did. They said that he had brought shame and disaster to the community, and that he had to face the consequences of his actions. They said that the River Muma was just and fair, and that she would have forgiven him if he had shown remorse and repentance. But he was stubborn and greedy, and he did not listen to the voice of wisdom. The story of Leroy spread far and wide as a reminder that thievery and dishonesty can have dire consequences, not just to the offender but to the people around him. The story became a part of Jamaican folklore and was passed down from generation to generation. Lesson to be learned from this story is that greed and dishonesty can lead to terrible consequences. Leroy, the thief, was motivated by his desire for wealth and fame. He did not care about the harm he caused to the River Muma and her daughter. He also ignored the warnings and the signs of the water spirit's anger and thought he could get away with his actions. He paid a heavy price for his folly, losing his freedom and became a prisoner of the River Muma. Even though he did not know that the little girl was the daughter of the water spirit, he had evil plans to sell her and the golden comb he had taken from her. The story teaches us to respect nature and its guardians, and to be humble and honest in our dealings with others. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more captivating Jamaican folklore stories. Thank you for watching.